Steve and John, will probably keep that on the group.
Drew, Drew,
Now, their little pictures are too small, and I don't want to see.
I don't think they can hear us.
That's right.
I think whoever's speaking is the one that
Okay.
largest.
Yes.
So that would largely be, or there.
Okay.
I can share my PowerPoint.
Good evening, Commissioners. I appreciate your time
Good evening.
tonight and the uniqueness of this event. Everybody's getting pretty good at it by now, and look forward to getting my hug from Miss Gregg and Miss Hines when the coast is clear. But welcome. I officially opened the July meeting of the Florence City Planning Commission. I think we have one guest on tonight, and other than that, I'll stick with the agenda, and that will be the approval of the minutes. I missed last month, and Mr. Owens was kind enough to be here and chair for us, and did an excellent job. The commissioners have received their packets. They've seen the minutes. If there are no changes or corrections, I call for a motion.
We recommend approval of the minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I'm not hearing any of the commissioners.
Charles Howard.
Second.
Mr. Howard has seconded. I have a motion, a second to approve as submitted. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Like sign nay. In this case, I guess y'all are just going to have to raise your hand rather than speak. Okay, thank you, sir. All right, the minutes have been approved, and the first item on the agenda is PC 2020-15. The commissioners have their packet again. This is a request to amend the Unified Development Ordinance. And I asked Mr. Johnson, I think you're going to be doing this tonight. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening,
Staff
everybody.
report, please.
All right. The city was approached earlier this year of some entrepreneurs within the city of Florence, including Mr. Stephen Thompson, about opening up brew pubs within the city limits. And we realized that we could permit such a use as a functionally similar use to something like a restaurant or alcoholic beverage on-site consumption. But we saw that our code needed to be updated to be a little more explanatory for those trying to get into this sort of business within the city limits. And also, if we could codify what state law says into the Unified Development Ordinance, and also add any conditions that we see fit to prevent any nuisances associated with the use. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint screen with you guys, and we will briefly go over the ordinance changes we'd like to make regarding brew pubs, microbreweries, breweries, distilleries, and microdistilleries. Let me just let it catch up for a second.
Excuse me, can y'all hear me? Excuse me, can y'all hear me?
Okay, so in going over what we needed for the different codes, we saw
Hello?
brew pubs was definitely something that
I
we
didn't get an
would
agenda.
permit within the city.
I don't
Florence.
know.
We also started looking at microbreweries.
They gave me a half agenda, Drew.
Distilleries, and in our industrial districts, we looked at breweries and distilleries themselves. So a brewery, this is our proposed ordinance definition. It's a brewery is considered heavy industrial, so it would be in our heavy industrial district. And it is a brewer that brews over 15,000 U.S. barrels of beer annually. And each barrel of beer is 31 gallons. So an example of that would be Sierra Nevada Brewing Company in North Carolina. Under the state law, some of the things that are spelled out, some of the guidelines, no limit on the amount of barrels produced. You can sell on site if the beer is 12% alcohol by volume or less. These sales need to be in conjunction with some sort of tour, some sort of educational tour of the brewery. Each person over 21 can have 48 ounces per person per day, and they can also sell 208 ounces per day for off-site consumption. So that's a brewery in state code. Our proposed ordinance, this is the use table. The only place it would be conditional use in the city limits would be heavy industrial. So some of the conditions with heavy industrial are you have to follow federal, state, and local laws, no hazardous waste disposal on site, minimum distances of materials from other uses, buffer yards, and the control of truck traffic. Next up, as we mentioned, brew pubs. And then our definition also says, see alcoholic beverages sales for on-site consumption, which is already in our ordinance. So each zoning district, if they want to do on-site consumption, has certain guidelines that they have to follow, just as the brew pub would have to follow in those certain zoning designations. So this is a public house, restaurant, or hotel, which produces up to 2,000 barrels a year. So it's a big difference between the brewery and the brew pub. The brew pub is only 2,000 barrels per year, and is compliant with state code. An example of this, one of the local examples would be Southern Hops Brewing Company. You go inside, you can get food, but also they brew, Goldilocks and other beers on site that you can order. For state code for a brew pub, like I said, the 2,000 barrels per year maximum, we just codified that. Can sell for on-site consumption on draft, and then off-site if it's in bottles. And it also says sanitary containers if the purchaser so chooses. I don't know what a sanitary container is, but bottles mostly. And then serve food to satisfy state code about food service with the sale of alcohol. And then no brew pub permittee may sell or ship the beer produced on the permitted premises for sale in another location. So a brewery, yes, you could ship it off to be sold in another location, and the brew pubs, one of the stipulations is it needs to be consumed on site or bought on site. And they can also sell the beer of a producer which has been permitted as a wholesaler by the state. So a brew pub, their usage would be conditional in our commercial areas, commercial general, our central business district, which is around the downtown area, activity center, and destination select use. Some of the proposed conditions for the city code would be that they'd have to follow all the regulations in South Carolina code. They'd have to get a state permit as required by code. All manufacturing options would have to be within the building. The loading area would be to the side or the rear of the structure. Deliveries have limited hours, no outside storage, and these are just conditions to kind of mitigate the use itself. The use shall include a commercial kitchen, and 30% of their sales need to come from food sales. The meals are served upon demand of guests, and an adequate supply of food is present to meet demand. Next up is distillery. I think we're all familiar with this one. A distillery in the Unified Development Ordinance proposed would also be heavy industrial, just as the brewery. Distill, blends, and bottles alcoholic liquors on licensed premises in the state. And this is alcohol greater than 17%. And a micro distillery is less than 125,000 cases per year. So a distillery is 125,000 cases or more by state code. And obviously an example is Jack Daniel's Distillery. So for South Carolina law, there's no maximum on how much is distilled on site. The alcohol is greater than 17%. In state code, one owner cannot operate more than one distillery per county. There's certain times for tastings, and if you do go on an educational tour, each individual can only have 3 ounces per day, and can only offer alcohol distilled on site. And they can sell up to 3 750 milliliter bottles per customer per day. So the distillery is more of it's the heavy industrial. A microbrewery, So a manufacturer which produces an annual maximum production capacity of 15,000 barrels. So there's no cap on breweries. Microbreweries is capped at 15,000 barrels. Brew pubs is 2,000 barrels. So you can kind of see how they step down in intensity. And that's still 465 gallons per year, which is a large number by state code. An example of that would be Seminar Brewing Company on West Lucas Street. So under state law, 15,000 barrels per year maximum, and then just like the brewery can sell on site if under 12% alcohol by volume, 48 ounces per person per day, and for off-site consumption, someone can buy 208 ounces per day of what is brewed at the facility. The microbrewery is allowed again in the commercial areas. It's conditional use in light industrial, but it is permitted outright in heavy industrial. And then our proposed conditions for a microbrewery are it has to follow state code, it has to have a permit by state code. Alcoholic beverage sales for on-site consumption have to follow the rules already in our Unified Development Ordinance for that particular zoning designation. You're limited to 15,000 U.S. beer barrels per year, all manufactured within fully enclosed building, and then the deliveries are, there's a certain time that you can make deliveries side and rear of the structure for loading areas, no outside storage. And if it is in the light industry, a couple more guidelines kick in that you have to have a minimum of 500 feet from a residential district, and you're not going to cause any problems with your neighbors as far as noise, dust, vibration, odors, things of that nature. And then we go into micro distillery. So this is a step down from a distillery where you have to produce less than 125,000 cases per year. And an example of this is on North Douglas Street. We have Straw Hat Distillery. State code, like I said, 125,000 cases per year max. Same as distillery, over 17%. One owner can have one per county. The hours are limited, 9 to 7 p.m., no more than 3 ounces per day. And like I said, they can sell some for off-site consumption. The micro distilleries are allowed again in the commercial areas, and they are permitted outright in heavy industrial. So our proposed conditions are meet state code, get a state permit, follow on-site consumption conditions already in our code, limited to 125,000 cases, and again, loading area deliveries, no outside storage allowed. So that's kind of, we wanted those conditions in each one of these uses. If it's in light industry, again, it has to follow light industry code. And if it's in heavy industry, it has to follow heavy industry guidelines. And all these proposed uses still have to be in compliance with the Alcoholic Beverage Control Act. And one of the things that they look at initially off the bat when you're getting permitted for the state is if you're within municipal limits, you have to be 300 feet from any church, school, or playground. And that does conclude staff's report. We do understand this is a complex issue, and we really aren't under any time constraints at this time. We did, in doing some further research today, find out that some other cities have different barrel thresholds. You know, going from 2,000 barrels a day to 15,000 barrels a day is a huge difference. So it might be good for staff to look at maybe some sort of gradient system, maybe a tiered system for the more intense uses instead of not a lot to a whole lot. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I have a couple questions I'm sure the commissioners do as well. And I do appreciate the fact that we're not being pushed into trying to make a decision. This is certainly, I can see the staff has spent a lot of time on this. My question, I noticed that the microbrewery and the brew pub, you know, you do limit the quantities per person per day. Who polices that, and how does that compare to a regular bar, nightclub, restaurant, and people might tend to have more than that. But who polices the 4 beers per day on the, and then the 3 ounces per day on the micro distillery?
Those are all state regulations and, social distance myself from Derek here. But those are all, state regulations, and typically those are enforced, by SLED. So, and a lot of times our local alcohol rules in general at bars and nightclubs are enforced by SLED. And the threshold comes, and some of our rules and requirements center around the fact that I think a brew pub, even though they're limited in their, barrel production per year, although they're not limited in the quantity they can serve per night, we felt that they would very much function as a typical, like a bar, essentially, or a restaurant with a bar in it. So we treated it accordingly. Whereas a brewery or a microbrewery in this situation, which the state kind of looks at it under the same requirements, but a microbrewery would be limited in their consumption, and I think we, the city police department, would have the ability to enforce that, as well as SLED would have the ability to enforce that, and then the brewer's license would be in jeopardy at that point.
Gotcha. I notice your example on Southern Hops, they are limited on their servings, and they sell other beverages other than what they brew there. So is there some conflict between, if they sell Miller Lite, they can sell as many as they want to, but their particular product, they're limited to 4?
On a state level, I believe those are the requirements, yes.
Okay, a little confusing, it seems to me.
It is. And a lot of it's tied up in the historical, the 3-tier distribution system, and the way alcoholic beverages are distributed within the state. They heavily regulate how much a brewery can actually serve on site versus how much would be distributed through that 3-tiered system.
I'm going to ask the other commissioners to chime in, but I do have, I think staff has done a great job on this. Did you use any kind of model from other cities, or where did you get this from?
Combination. We did a fair amount of research from other cities, because state liquor laws or state alcohol laws vary from state to state. We were able to glean some in general from other states, but mainly from South Carolina, areas like Charleston. Greer was a good example. I think Rock Hill was in our list. So we gleaned from other municipalities.
All right, I'd like for any of the commissioners to, ask questions of staff. If you have any, if you want to raise your hand, we can get you to chime in. That's an interesting picture right there. I'm not going to go there. All right, I do not see any questions. Mr. Owens, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. I think processing information, taking time to process information, we're so good at creating unintended consequences, especially when we're processing this much information. My recommendation to the other commissioners is going to be probably to defer this at a later date. So I'll go ahead and mention that while we take time to study and research.
Absolutely. We do have a public hearing, so I will open that and close it. I think we might have one gentleman that would like to participate in the public hearing. So, and Mr. Owens, thank you. I agree with you on that comment. So I'll open the public hearing portion of this, and if anyone would like to speak on behalf, against or for this particular request, we'll open the microphones up and invite you to participate. Would you raise your hand, please, if you have interest in talking? Okay. Okay, I have interest. If we could get his mic on.
Can you hear me?
Is it on? Okay. Go ahead, sir. You have the floor. If you'll introduce yourself by, giving us your name, please.
Yeah, Stephen Thompson, and I don't have a lot to say.
Hold on just
Yep.
a minute, please, sir. Okay, you may not have signed in fully to be able to get the voice.
We're hearing his voice.
I'm looking at our IT guy. That's when I'm looking in that direction. So,
Yeah, I
give
hear
us
him.
just a minute and see if we can work this out.
I don't think Drew hears us. So.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can hear each other.
You may have to select.
But then
At a meeting.
So they can,
Stephen,
Yes.
our IT guy is suggesting that maybe you select the correct microphone on your device, or
Bottom right, or bottom left corner where it says audio,
bottom left corner where it says audio.
click on that little arrow that brings up the menu.
Arrow that brings up the menu.
And once you see that, that menu, you
Yep.
should see something that allows you to select the microphone.
Yep.
You may have to select a different one to get it to work.
I selected same as system. Can you hear me? Yes, no?
I hear you.
Yeah, I hear you.
Problems on their end, Stephen. I'm sorry.
I
I
hear.
think we all can hear each other, but you guys can't hear us. Is the problem, Drew?
Robbie, Sam, we can hear each other. The problem is-
Yeah, they may not have a mute. I think they may have muted.
Hold up, Stephen, we're figuring the problem may be on our end. Hold up.
Yeah. Yes.
Hill, can you see something?
Yeah, Locomotive is moving to Nashville Outdoors.
what I
So
thought.
we zone them as a brew pub. And one of the conditions was that they have a food truck on site whenever they're serving what they brew. Because one of they have to have a commercial kitchen by state
Okay.
code.
Hey, Charles, can you say something?
Yeah. Can you hear me? You can't hear me, can you?
It may be easier if I dial in. I have the instructions. I don't have a lot to say. I don't want it to.
Well, we've got to be able to speak as well. That's the problem.
The problem is definitely on their end.
They got to be able to hear us. Yeah. See, they can't hear any of us.
Yeah.
So even if you dial in, if we have questions, they aren't going to be able to hear
Right.
us ask you questions.
Just have to postpone voting, hands down.
Yeah. Charles, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hey, we hear you. We're good.
Oh, good. There we go.
Stephen, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right.
Good
There
deal.
we go.
I'll reintroduce myself. My name is Stephen Thompson. And I appreciate you guys opening this up for conversation. In working with the zoning group and working through various business models, how the state regulates, and the guys did a great job of laying it out, how the state regulates and how the state classifies sizes of breweries and sizes of distilleries, and then allowing within those business models you to operate in a certain manner. What we found when we were downtown, that was more of a brew pub, which gives you a lot of latitude as far as what you serve, when you can serve. And the key underlying factor for that particular model is really food. With food, you really blend away from being a brewery, and now you're more of a restaurant bar that does brew your own beer. You can sell as much of that as you want to. You can sell as much of other people's beer as you want to. You can apply for a liquor license, and if granted that, you can even sell liquor. But that's all under the umbrella, really, of food, and then obviously what DHEC is doing in that arena. What we're doing now at Naturally Outdoors really is classified as a microbrewery, and it really, what that talks about is what the core focus of our business is. So with that microbrewery license, we're going to be primarily a beer distributor, or excuse me, a brewery that works through a distributor. So our beer, we'll leave we'll brew beer on site, can it, keg it, trucks will come pick it up, put it through a warehouse, and then send it out to bars and restaurants throughout the state. And what we're giving up through that is selling other people's beer, selling more than 48 ounces, selling liquor. So it's really, and it is complicated because there are tiers, and the 3-tier system, and the way Title 61 is, it's a thick document that the state has had in place for a number of years. But, a brewery, as it relates to interaction with the public, is probably, from an alcohol safety standpoint, probably the safest. We have to give each person that we sell beer to a tour. So there's a bit of an education piece there. Again, it's more of a extension of a craft. So we're using that opportunity to show people what we do. We can sell them 208 ounces to go. We can sell them 48 ounces of beer on site. And that's really the end of our interaction with that, with each individual customer on a daily basis. So I guess a good way to think about it is someone who, the candlestick maker, and he allows people to come in and buy candles. He shows them how he makes candles, and they leave. So it's a different, while it is alcohol, it is a different viewpoint. We see it as a different viewpoint. One of the reasons we're excited about Natural Outdoors is you've got a collection of businesses that, care about different, quality, whether it be haircuts or coffee, and more of a family atmosphere. So we like the distinction of a brewery because we feel that fits what our business actually is. It's not a bar that's trying to do something else. We're really a brewery that brews beer, distributes beer, and allows guests to come in and educate them on what we're doing. So it's I have a lot of co-owners and other folks who own other breweries in other state or other cities around the state that all operate under Title 61, and it has worked in those areas. So that's really all I want to do. That guys did a great job of putting Title 61 sort of as the standard for what the ordinances would allow. That's a state regulation that's been place for a long time.
Well, sir, I certainly appreciate your comments. It was extremely knowledgeable, helpful as far as the commission is concerned. Your knowledge of the industry is outstanding, and your participation with city staff, I'm sure, has helped us get this far, and thank you very much for what you have done. and you make a great product at the same time. So thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions of this gentleman before? Okay, I have Mr. Howard raising his hand. Mr. Howard, please ask away.
Yeah, Steve, it sounds like you're in favor of this, and I just want to be sure that, you know, some of us may be consumers and fans of your product. We don't understand the rules and the state guidelines and that sort of thing. And so, you know, what we want to make sure of is that we don't do something that creates an undue burden. And I think Drew or someone mentioned earlier that, you know, unintended consequences. Are you?
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of this passing. It really, what it does is without it, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, just quickly, yeah, I'm definitely in favor of it. What this change really allows is our business to be presented more the way we intend. It's not, without it, you then have to do a lot of things that sort of change your business model to fit what's allowed by SLED and DHEC. So without that, this really just allows us to focus more on brewing, and our tap room just becomes more of a tasting area rather than a bar area.
Thank you, sir.
Did my question
Questions from staff?
get out there? I lost a connection at some point during my question.
We hear you fine now. You want to continue your question, Mr. Howard?
Well, I don't know what you heard and what you didn't hear. The Cliff Note version is, Steve, are you satisfied with what the city's come up with as far as these regulations? We don't want to do anything that creates an undue problem for people that are trying to do business within the city. So I'm assuming that you support those guidelines.
Yeah, definitely in favor.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions from the commissioners? Would anyone like to, there's no one else that will be speaking in the public hearing portion of this, so I will close the public hearing and call for a motion.
I'll move that we defer.
I have a motion to defer. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to defer. Any discussions? Hearing none, I'll ask you to raise your hands. All those in favor, raise your hand. Okay, I think that is Mr. Yeah, I see Mr. Moses. Okay, that is unanimous. There are no nays, so that is a unanimous vote. Stephen, thank you very much for your participation. I'm sure that we're going to be coming back to you as we continue to fine tune this and hopefully make this a perfect document if possible. One quick note, if you've never been to Sierra Nevada, it is an event, so please partake. All right, the next item on the agenda is PC 2020-17. Let me put my glasses on. This is consideration of the amendment of the City of Florence interest in undeveloped portion of public right-of-way. Staff, report, please.
Yes, it's kind of a tongue twister. I'm going to share my PowerPoint screen again. We'll wait for it to catch up. There we go. I pressed too many buttons. So this is regarding the undeveloped portion of right-of-way between 622 and 700 Greenway Drive. This is the portion of right-of-way that's under consideration. It's between 622 and 700, and then it also touches the parcel on 1509 Cherokee Road. Here's a little bit closer view. You know, one neighbor has a driveway in the right-of-way, but other than that, it's completely undeveloped Here's a city utility map. Everything tends to go down Greenway Drive. We do not have any utilities that run through the right-of-way itself. So here's a site photo of the right-of-way. You can see it's kind of on the left side is the bush, and then sort of on the right side is the driveway, the larger part of the driveway. It just kind of goes straight back into the woods. So this is the piece that we are considering abandoning. The request was made by the property owner of 622, Mr. John Moore. We have consulted with other departments, fire, police, and we find no reason to retain this particular right-of-way. The Planning Commission recommends and City Council approves this land will be able to be divvied up between the 3 adjacent property owners for private ownership. And that does conclude staff's report.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
We approached this several months back. It was before this commission at least 3 or 4 months ago.
That was also Greenway Drive, but it was another section of Greenway Drive. It was south of Cherokee, that portion. This portion of Greenway Drive is north, and it's actually, it's a little misleading, the title. It's not Greenway Drive. It's kind of a spur that comes off of Greenway Drive. Okay. And just to add note as well, we have consulted with all 3 property owners. The driveway itself is not exactly in the middle, but the 3 property owners have agreed to go ahead and draw up a plat, which we can make as an exhibit for the ordinance that goes before City Council, and it'll show the actual subdivision of land so that the person that owns the driveway will actually own that. The other property owner on the portion that they agree to as well, that does not include the other person's driveway. The little rear portion would go to Mr. Campbell to the rear.
Have all the property owners, the 3 property owners agreed to this disbursement?
They have agreed to this. They have not yet drawn up the plat, but we'll make it, and I'd maybe even appreciate it as part of a motion if we make the plat a requirement to go to City Council.
Okay. All right. Any of the commissioners have questions of staff?
No.
I'm sorry, I believe we do. Who was that?
I said no, I don't.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, I will open the public hearing portion of this. I do not believe we have anyone that will be participating in that. So I will close the public hearing and call for a motion.
I'll move that we recommend approval of the applicant's request to abandon the right-of-way with the amendment that Mr. Dudley recommended to add an exhibit that shows a plat of how the property is particularly divided up against the adjacent property owners.
Your recall is excellent, thank you. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion, a second. And I'm not going to try to repeat it because my recall is not that good, but just any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask you to raise your hand in a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, that is unanimous again. I didn't look at you. Did you hit?
My
Yeah.
hand was
Okay.
raised, yes.
No need to ask for a nay. So that is unanimous as well. And that brings us to the next item on the agenda, 2020-18. This is a request for sketch plan review. Staff report, please, and good evening.
Good evening. I have to adjust everything. These tall people. All right. All right, this is a sketch plan review of a residential development along Festival Drive, which is the private road coming off of Celebration Boulevard. It's, if you're familiar with the area, it is behind the Bojangles on Palmetto Street there, and next to Mi Tierra and the daycare center. And this is a location map of the parcel, and it's about a half-acre lot. It is zoned general commercial. And the request, or the future land use is as a commercial auto urban, which is mixed use. And it is a half-acre parcel, and it is one building without 8 townhome units. The sketch plan does meet the requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance, showing the minimum lot widths, the setbacks, and it does provide the minimum 2,400 square foot per unit requirement, which does include common space. As part of the development plan, once the sketch plan receives approval, as part of the development plan, the developer will be required to show utilities and the rest of the requirements as determined by the ordinance. The common drive, because this is off of a private road, it is able to be perpendicular to the street. Normally, the front of the buildings are required to face onto a public street, but because this is a private road, Festival Drive is, it is allowed to be, for them to be facing onto a private road or a private driveway, which is how the developer has oriented the building. And the, as I said, any other requirements of the ordinance will be addressed during the development plan review process, which is standard for developments of this kind. This is a site photo. That green space in front of the daycare center is where this would be located. That concludes staff's report.
Thank you, Ms. Lane. Any questions of staff regarding this request?
I just had a quick question about,
Go ahead.
I was curious about the, land to service requirement for the stormwater for MS4. Is it, if it's under an acre, there's no requirement, right? Is that right?
Well, I've spoken with our stormwater department, and because this is part of a larger development, as part of the Festival Drive development, that they would have to show that, would have to show how they plan to take care of stormwater, yes. And as part of this, there would be a full, development plan submittal. This is sketch plan approval, so it's the basic concept, that the full utility plan, stormwater plan, and all that would need to be submitted at that time.
I believe we have Mr. Hopkins. Are you online with us?
I am online. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
We've hired Davis and Brown actually, and they're going to do an under acre stormwater plan for this site. And so to talk to Mr. Owens, that's already kind of in the works.
Thank you. Commissioners, have any additional questions of Mr. Hopkins? We approved about 6 months ago from Mr. Thomas building some apartments back there around, I think it's Celebration Lake. Is that, I haven't been out there in a while, has that already been completed as far as construction, or?
That was never developed.
Really? Okay.
They haven't brought the development plans back to us as of yet.
Okay. All right, any questions of Mr. Hopkins while we have him here? This does not require a public hearing, so this is kind of freelance if you have any questions. Mr. Hopkins, thank you for participating, and
Thank y'all.
good luck with your project.
Thank
All
you.
right, with that said, we need to, I'll call for a motion.
I'm going to include sketch plan.
Okay, thank you, sir. I have a motion to approve the sketch plan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion, and a second to approve as submitted. Any discussion? Hearing none, raise your hand, please. All those in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. Again, thank you all very much. The nays are 0. So, with that said, we have gotten through our technical difficulties. We have gotten our July Planning Commission completed, and we'll just get ready for next month. I would like for Mr. Moses to make a motion.
I got a question.
Oh, wait, excuse me, Mr. Moses.
Is the Palmetto Court,
Oh, You need to defer that.
I did. I got an
Yeah, that
email
was-
today.
Oh,
Okay.
I
yeah,
sent
that
out the
was
new
wrong.
agenda.
Okay, sorry about that.
You probably need to
But-
vote, you need to vote on it.
You tell me them 80-something acres?
Yeah,
Vote on what?
We just need to make a recommendation for deferral.
that's right.
Oh, okay. Well, it
Motion
wasn't even on
for
my agenda, so why would it be
I
up?
thought when they deferred it, they didn't need
You
to,
said you're
unless
gonna,
they,
Oh, if they
if
do
they
that.
brought it
applicant-
to
the
and
applicant
then asked to
deferred it?
defer
Yeah.
during it. But I thought if it was deferred ahead of time.
staff deferred it, not commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't need to vote on that.
Right, yes, there was a proposed 80-acre tract of land for zoning and annexation. However, the applicant has requested deferral of this to the next month.
Okay. So we don't need to vote on that. All right, Mr. Moses,
I'd move that we adjourn.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Before the meeting.
Second.
Thank you. All right, everybody stay safe out there, stay healthy, and thank you for your participation.